Joy. We all want joy. We all want to be happy. Ask a random selection of people on the street what the most important thing in life is, and a very high percentage of them will say that it's to be happy. They simply want to be happy in life. But as much as we want happiness, the evidence tells us that we're not very good at finding it. Indeed, it's fair to say that we are living in a generation right now that is quickly becoming defined by its lack of joy. Ours is a generation becoming increasingly defined by poor mental health, specifically anxiety and depression. You'll hear a lot of people talking about this in the world today. It's very common how they suffer from anxiety and depression, almost to the point that it's becoming the norm to suffer from anxiety and depression.
You do suffer from anxiety? It's something that you have to live with?
I also struggled a lot with anxiety and depression.
I have some sort of anxiety, depression.
And like my anxiety is just crazy.
You're coming out and speaking openly about your battles with depression and anxiety.
What I would tell kids that are going through anxiety, which I have and can relate to.
Zendaya gets candid about her anxiety struggles.
Those ages is when I really started looking up for ways to describe what I felt, and the words I came across were stress, anxiety, and depression.
It's not just the anecdotal evidence either. All of the studies and surveys that are currently being done on this subject are coming back with the same results, that anxiety and depression are indeed on the rise. According to one government report, 5 times as many teenagers are reporting anxiety disorders today compared to 10 years ago. The National Institute of Mental Health says that around 20% of American citizens, that's 1/5, will experience an anxiety disorder this year, and that figure is rising by 40% annually. Depression is now globally the leading disability and the 10th most common cause of early death. The link between depression and suicide is also clear. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in people aged 15 to 29, and around the world, 2 people kill themselves every single minute. And what's more, the problem seems to be especially pronounced in the younger generations. It's getting worse, it's not getting better. Here's a stat from a recent campaign on British TV.
In the last 15 years, there has been a staggering 48% rise in anxiety and depression amongst British children.
So the whole thing appears to be reaching epidemic proportions at the moment. And there are many theories as to why we're suddenly feeling more anxious. Why, for example, 1/3 of young women and 1/10 of young men now report suffering from panic attacks. Some point the finger at social media and say that that's the problem. Others say that alarming climate change rhetoric is filling young people with fear about the future. And then there are things like diseases and viruses. Some say that extreme political polarization is causing hysteria. Some say that it's down to job insecurity. We may touch on some of these issues throughout this series, but all I want to say at the moment is this. Whatever the arguments are about the causes, the raw data tells us that we human beings are simply not very happy at the moment. We are worried, we're stressed, we're anxious, we're fearful, we're depressed, but happiness seems to be in quite short supply. There are many reasons as to why this shouldn't be the case. Statistically, we've never lived longer or had better healthcare than we do today. Statistically, we've never been as prosperous as we are right now. And of course, we've never had as many technological advantages as we do today either. People in the past had much harder lives than we do in many respects. So there are good reasons as to why we should be doing okay at the moment. And yet we're not. We're still pursuing happiness. Many of us consider it to be of the utmost importance and even the end goal of life. But we're doing something wrong in the pursuit. We want it, we're just not sure how to get it. And instead, a lot of us are getting anxiety and depression instead. Now, maybe it's a false hope. Maybe it's an impossible dream. Maybe true joy doesn't really exist on this earth. You sometimes be forgiven for thinking so. But when I read the Bible for God's thoughts on the matter, I'm struck by just how uncompromising and clear they are. God, through His Word, not only tells us that joy is possible, He tells us that joy is expected, it's commanded, it's even inevitable. Time and time again, God implores His people to be joyful. Let me lay down some verses to show you what I mean here, starting in the Old Testament. May all who are godly rejoice in the Lord and praise his holy name. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him singing with joy. So rejoice in the Lord and be glad, all who obey him. Shout for joy, all you whose hearts are pure. O Israel, rejoice in your Maker. Let the whole world sing for joy. Come everyone, clap your hands, shout to God with joyful praise. So go ahead, eat your food with joy and drink your wine with a happy heart, for God approves of this. Let all the people of Jerusalem shout his praise with joy. Don't be dejected and sad, for the joy of the Lord is our strength. The Old Testament contains hundreds of verses like these, and when Jesus came to earth, he continued to affirm this same joyful message. Be happy about it. Be very glad. Be happy. Yes, leap for joy. Rejoice because your names are registered in heaven. Rejoice with me. And then the rest of the New Testament continues to press home this same message, perhaps even more strongly than ever. Rejoice in hope. Always be joyful. Yes, you should rejoice, and I will share your joy. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Finally, my brothers, rejoice in the Lord. Our hearts ache, but we always have joy. Let us rejoice and exult and give him glory. Dear brothers and sisters, I close my letter with these last words. Be joyful. As you can see, God is quite relentless on insisting on our joy. The words happy, happiness, joy, or rejoice appear in the Bible around 330 times. From beginning to end, the Bible never wavers on this message. Being joyful isn't just an optional garnish on the Christian life, it's an essential ingredient. God tells us that his followers are to be characterized by joy. And wouldn't it be a cruel thing for God to command if it didn't really exist? So this is where we begin this series. This is what we know so far. We know that many of us are struggling with anxiety and depression today, but we know that joy is possible. The Bible tells us this. From beginning to end, the Bible insists on our joy. And we know that God wouldn't insist on it if it didn't really exist. But our response, however, now goes something like this. Lord, we want joy, we really do. But the truth is, we don't know where to find it. We're searching for it constantly. We often regard it as being of the utmost importance. But life is difficult, and we struggle with it from time to time, and we seem to be looking in the wrong places. Very many of us are simply becoming more anxious and depressed in these days. So tell us, where is this happiness to be found? How do we get it? And this is the exciting part. The key to joy has been right in front of us this whole time. It's almost been hidden in plain sight, if you will, staring at us in the face for thousands of years, but not always immediately obvious. I mean, it's there, it exists, but it's not down the path that we'd intuitively expect to find it. That's a bit cryptic, but in the next episode, I'll explain further.